Whatever exists in nature has a purpose to simply decompose the rotting, lifeless matter, or to transmute it into the soil so that something else can be born again. So that's just but a natural mechanism. And if we as humans are a part of this ecosystem, misuse our free will and our awareness is too low, so we make choices about our living, about our food, about the way we treat waste, or we ourselves become a dustbin, right, where we fail to sustain life with a capital L within our body. So what do you expect then? Obviously, you expect the body being succumbed to the process of decomposition, which is but natural within nature and creation. I mean, this nature is what we know of creation so far at this point. Some animals seem like they're dying, but yet they get transformed into something else. You can't die. What you're referring perhaps to is unnatural death position, right? What is happening to your body and why is it happening? Have you asked yourself? Have you ever resorted, because black magic, again, if you understood, black magic works when there are hosts. It's very easy to contract all kinds of parasites. So the purpose when you're living there, and the purpose of those plants existing there, is to find the solution so that your body doesn't need to decompose prematurely or be eaten, or if you have been infested, which perhaps you were, and it looks like black magic, but it is simply a parasitic element there. I would also recommend a couple of substances, for example, different barks. Barks are of a astringent taste. So barks help you to also free yourself from fungi. To my knowledge, worms and fungi operate in symbiosis in the human body. And sometimes, no, most of the time, fungi creates a film, biofilm, which can protect worms from being, killed by our substances. So what's important is to have foods that have natural source of vitamin C, or to have herbs or herbal combinations, maybe alchemical combinations, because sometimes we can obtain even from some crystals a substance, if it's alchemically processed substance called natural vitamin C, or some kind of acid, which is like vitamin C. But anyways, it's not the point. The point is that the herbs that you're taking, barks especially, have to contain vitamin C, where in combination with these bitter herbs and these other substances, you can target both parasites. You have to target fungus and you have to target worms. Then it's effective. So then the biofilm, which they may create for protection of themselves, and which can be used by worms, can be penetrated. Oftentimes, worms create cystic formations in the body to protect their offspring. And then people are diagnosed with tumors, with some kind, because this is what you see with ultrasound. But in reality, this is a cyst, it's a parasitic cyst. So in order to get rid of it, as I said, we need to use natural substances. They can be of organic or non-organic nature, or in combination. That's what Siddhas and Ayurvedic masters used to use, or Taoists and many other. I think in Middle East, they also use that. In Africa, everywhere. So they make these herbal mixtures, or they roll them in a particular form, like in Sanskrit, it would be called vati, or like a tablet or some bowl, and they would ingest it. And the most effective medicine would be when there are when there is mercury or some other purified, not raw mercury, but purified mercury in a particular alchemical way mixed with herbs. So that's most efficient because that targets not just blood or gut, it targets parasites and parasitic pathogens on cellular level. Now, this is one thing. Let's say you kill them. Then when you kill them, the release of this parasitic matter, which is pathogens and residue of their livelihood and their death, will affect your body. You might experience severe pains, die-offs. And so that's where you might think you're dying. This is because your nerves, your muscles, your tissues will all be trying to expel that. And what is happening when the body is trying to expel? It will heat up, might even swell, and you have pains where meninges are inflamed, which could cause headaches. Yeah. That's where you have to have some kind of guidance or someone watching over you, where you know exactly what you're doing. And when you start hitting that point of a die-off, or die-off has already happened, this is where you have to start hydrating yourself, having organic lemon water, having charcoal in a different time, administering in different times, but a lot of lemon water, precisely warm, not cold, having different, again, herbal teas, which are having antiparasitic nature, but mixed with lemon juice, not too hot. You add lemon juice when they aren't too hot. And then you can also take some other absorbents like zeolite, if it works. And again, I cannot guarantee any high quality of these substances nowadays, because it has to be fit for human consumption or whatever, the good grade. Or you can use sometimes just natural detox substances. For example, in some cultures, they use senna, and they also connected to, let's say, occult purification, meaning a purification of, let's say in Muslim cultures, zihir purification, meaning when you ingested something which had some kind of incantation and it affected the system. So then, but senna is very harsh, and without having someone around, the person may experience severe cramps, especially if it has been for a long time. But most of the time, they think it is zihir or some black magic, but it is maybe a combination of being hijacked by the parasite and the residue that has been of parasitic living that has been thrown into people's bloods, and they're spread all over their organism. That's hijacked kind of their way of being in the body, meaning the quality of life. So they lost that, their quality of life became poor from inside. And that the amount of pathogens and toxins which are constantly circulating within the blood, but also have penetrated into the depth of their body, which is their muscle, their meat, their bones, their marrow, and start causing pains, arthritis, degeneration, which is cancer, that started causing impotency, loss of fertility, etc., which already affect the level of shukra, which is the seed. So that is causing them to feel like they're dying while being alive, because they're constantly fatigued, because they're constantly in pain, because their immune system fails to purge it out continuously and start stagnating, and they no longer can function. The nervous system starts feeling stressed, restless, anxious because of the increased amount of pathogens, which is the residue of parasitic presence and other chemical pollutants in the body from food, environment, etc., that are circulating in the body. And that's why things that shouldn't touch you now start touching you, and you become restless, and you become anxious, and you become, your mind is stagnant, because the machine is hijacked by parasitic beings, but like worms or protozoas, amoebas, but also by the residue. It's not just about the parasites, it's about what they produce fungus produces hallucinogenic stuff. That's why people which are hijacked by fungi start eventually going crazy. They start having mental health issues. They start having different neurological disorders because some parasites penetrate into the tissue deeper. That's what our Siddha and Ayurvedic and Taoist masters knew, but nowadays medicine doesn't. So they penetrate, and they penetrate to the depth of the nerves. And then when the nerves are hijacked, when the nerves are affected, then it's just enough one area to be affected. It could be in the gut, but because all the nerves and meridians stretched along the body, what's going to happen is that you might start having symptoms which are completely disjoint, have nothing to do with your gut, because you might have neurological symptoms, neck pains, headaches, blurred vision, etc., etc. But the reason is in the gut, because our gut has nerve endings. It also has the vagus, for example, nerve, as we know it, or many other nerves. They're all connected to the upper and lower peripheries. But our current medicine does not connect leg to the head or arm or neck to the gut or the head. That's why we are all in this dumb age, suffering and numbing pains without healing. That's what I'm saying. And all the wise people said, start with your gut. All your neurological issues, all the stress is because your nervous system is not able to handle the reality in a balanced way. Balance means healthy. When people inhale mold or breathe mold in their houses, when people eat a lot of stuff that causes fungal yeast overgrowth, etc., those people having the substances that are emitted by this fungi into their blood affect their minds and make them slowly crazy. Crazy means dysregulated emotional responses, where certain things make you react in a very abnormal, dysregulated way. Yes, it's true. Sometimes we can be also stressed by, let's say, our parents, but that's the surface level, because they too are affected by parasites. Living in the same household from the childhood, we get affected by the same creatures. And no one is doing anything about it. And then we say, oh, these are neurological, mental, pathological, emotional patterns, when in reality, everything starts with the gut. Already you are sitting in the mother's gut there, in the mother's womb, but very close to the gut. And aligning with her system, which is already hijacked. And so all that stuff might not penetrate right away, but with the milk, once you're out with the milk, later on with the being in that environment. But so far, your immune system is strong when you're small. And so maybe you are not that affected, but your nervous system will be affected by the maternal patterns, because she is the one who is affected by that, or has been affected before your birth, or since her birth. So now, but as you're an adult, you have to realize that, and as you step on the spiritual path, which is a real path of refinement, freedom, and freedom from, first of all, everything that we know of reality. But before you get free from everything, you have to free your gut from parasites. You have to free your system from the pathogens. Let's say you kill the parasites. But if the pathogens still circulate in your body, in your blood, they have penetrated your cells, they affected your membranes, they affected everything you represent physically, then you still have to spend a lot of time detoxing, even after the die-off parasites. And then you have, after you've detoxed, that is the time when you start stabilizing your health by using now different type of herbs. You still are using the antiparasitic herbs from time to time as a baseline to maintain the balance. But now you're getting to the straight line of balancing your nervous system, which means you could continue purging from your cells, from your body, from different layers of your body tissues, this stuff, the residue, for some years, while meanwhile balancing your responses, taking herbs which are of different nature, which positively affect your nervous system, living or leading a very balanced lifestyle where meditation becomes your natural being. Through that natural being, you slowly learn to release psychological patterns, negative thinking that you've been accumulating since birth for whatever reasons, for all of these reasons that I mentioned, right? And so it will take up to 12 years or so, sometimes 24 years, sometimes 36 years, and sometimes 72 years. That's the reality. For it depends. And if by that time, your body, the way it shines, the way it looks changed, it means you've done it right. If it didn't, then you're doing something wrong. But for the majority of people who have been somewhat more or less, I would say, trying to be clean, it may take at least 12 years. It's like a target. But I would say most realistic timeline, 24, which is 2 solar cycles of 12 years, respectively. So that's the way to go. This is the science. That's why in ancient times, they started slightly before puberty. They would take a woman, a soon-to-be woman, they would take a boy, soon to be a man, and they would start the process. In that case, 2 cycles of 12 years is nothing. Then by the age of 42, these people would be refined. They would not have that number on their bodies. They would only have just calculation. But it won't be visible. That's why in all the Siddha tradition, which became secret, occult, and nobody knows about them, but they still exist, because you can't teach this to the people which are brought up by this corrupt system, because this corrupt system doesn't have an aim of being free from disease, which is aging. It wants people to age and die. It's called human recycling. But few beings who still remember the knowledge of the past, of the ancients, and I'm talking about over 7,000-10,000 years, they know that it is not about the number that we know, but it's about the quality of life from within. And in order to have that quality of life, you have to start very early. You have to start with that potency, potential, which is around your puberty. And you understand female path is different because she has a womb and she has a birthing mechanism. She has to guide a man. But boys have different function. So if the woman doesn't guide a boy, he never grows spiritually and anyhow. But we first have to grow women. Now, at this point, we're degenerated. And that's why, as women, we're degenerated in our majority. And that's why we're living in parasitic society, in parasitic environment. So you don't have wise women. These menopausal women who are into new age, shamanism and all, they don't know anything because they haven't started their journey before puberty. They have no idea. They are wannabes, but they have no idea. They haven't transmuted their menstruation into wisdom at that time. They lost it. The time claimed them. These are not wise women, unfortunately. So they can't guide men. They're desperate for men, when actually men should be desperate for women, because women, but there's no one to be desperate for. The quality is not there, neither in men nor in women. So that's what we have to restore, spiritually speaking. And we have to start from within. Even if you are in older age, but you understand the path, you know how, you can reverse. At least you can stop the disease and degeneration at a certain point where you can prolong life and gain at least some type of longevity, where you restore proper quality of life from within and can enjoy bliss in a healthy body, which doesn't bug you, neither neurologically, nor gastrointestinally, nor from the standpoint of your skin, hair, etc., teeth. Because all of that is connected. Your gut is hijacked, hair will fall, teeth will decay, skin will, be worsening. Eyesight will become blurry, you won't see. It's all because toxins settle in different parts of the body. And actually, this is, I mentioned, a very deep layer of degeneration, because it's the layer of bones. And the next would be seed. Impotency, meaning loss. That's what our women are experiencing during menopause. Loss of libido, they're already all the porous bones and stuff. Why? Because something or someone have contributed to the parasites. Someone nibbled on their flesh for quite too long. So why the ancients aimed at potency, sexual potency? Actually, they didn't aim at potency, but that would be a sign of proper spiritual work. It's not that they were desperate about having, sexual entertainment. That simply, virility, was the sign that you have preserved your seed and you're potent for long. So you can continue passing that information on, regardless your physical age, numbers. That wasn't the goal. Oh, I have to just enjoy and have, promote promiscuity. That was misunderstood. But virility was one of the signs. Another sign was lack of gray hair, good teeth, good eyesight. Who the hell created this idea that by the age of 40, you have to have blurred vision or rotten teeth? But we accepted it for normality because we cannot sustain life within for as little as our, I don't know, even 20 years of life. Actually, we're dying in infancy, because 120 years, it's an infancy, but we look old and crippled because the flesh is eaten by disease. And the only disease that exists in nature is the disease of decay, aging. And I know it may hurt, but this is the truth. This is the only truth. All the practices that our ancestors were using, from all kinds of alchemical substances, pharmacological substances, different kind of practices, was only with one aim: to prolong life, because they've lost the ability to sustain high quality of life, blissful being, because they lost touch with the spiritual essence. And the whole point of current spirituality is just to restore that link. But that link restoration is not enough, because we need to stop the spread of these parasites and remove the toxins. Today, you can kill them. You can use plant substances. Okay, you killed them. But for years, that stuff has penetrated through your tissues. So how many years should it take for you to free yourself from it? And how do you know that you're freeing yourself from that? Because you start having more energy. You start being calmer. You're less reactive. You're free from ideologies. You're no longer possessed by desires to neither know nor to pursue anything, and yet you can do life in a very harmonious way, in a very stable way, in a very abundant and prosperous way for you. That's the result of it. And it's nothing to do with spiritual theories or what you do in terms of spiritual rituals, sacrifices, how many cows you sacrificed, or bulls, or how many boys or girls you violated, or what kind of rituals you performed there. That doesn't matter, because that will not return you into a peaceful state. You actually do all these things because you are coming from anxiety, because you're eaten by parasites. The flesh eaten by parasites affects the mind, causes mental corruption. And that's why that mental corruption pushes us into demonic spirituality, into mentally, emotionally corrupt spirituality. That's why, since we've been eaten by parasites for the past 6,000 years, on an average, and because we lost touch with our spiritual essence, which was creating that shield internally and externally, that radio, I don't know how to say, radiation, that electromagnetic strong power that would repel parasites. And the food, we weren't eating any carbs like this, meaning pastas, breads, grains. We weren't, because the grains came into our food style only some 4,000 or 5,000 years ago. Our ancestors didn't eat this crap. They didn't eat beans, they didn't eat lentils, they didn't eat what most of the people eat. This food caused degeneration. This food caused mortality. This food caused fast agelessness. Aging. Instead of being ageless, people started aging and dying much faster than previously. And the lifespan reduced. Certainly there could have been some genetic modification, this type of human, that type, but this is a different point. The food itself is a contributor. All ancients knew that, okay, that food could be tasty for some people, but where does it go? It leads them to imbalances. So in those times yet, meaning when it started, they did use also herbs along with that food in order to balance it out. Poison, antidote, poison, antidote. Then they stopped with antidotes and continued shoving down their throat poison. And they continued doing it to the point of unprecedented situation. Look at the supermarket. What are you eating? All your sauces, 99% of the food is non-fit for human consumption. But yet people are eating and taking it for normality. So if you're taking poison for normality, the result is obvious. I have one follower who is, actually many followers who are doctors, or they perform some kind of tests or look at patients. The average age for cancer reduced to between 20 and 30 within just a couple of years after COVID, for example. And if you look at the past 50 years, 60 years, it increased because the food that we eat degenerates our tissues even faster than ever before. So how do you go about it? Actually, very easily. You start going back to the roots. But who knows the roots? No one tells us what were the roots. Only some few texts are left there about what people eat or used to eat in the past, before the introduction of grains, beans, lentils, and all this crap. And also fermentation. The doctors tell you, eat fermented foods, they're good. Yeah, they're good for sending you out quickly to the tomb, self-created grave, first within your gut and then afterwards elsewhere. So why our immune system heats up? Why do we have high fever sometimes? We don't have any virus. It's just that the level of pathogens in the body for that moment reached the level where immune system tries to purge it out. But we don't understand the signal of the body. So we start numbing this process, eventually stagnating our natural immune responses. And the result of it is psychosomatic autoimmune disorders. You know, in order to be spiritually evolved, not because you want so, or because you intellectually are so keen on and because it entertains you, but really at the root. And what is the root? At the physical root first, the body, the quality of life, peace, contentment, and bliss should be there at the root. Then everything you look at will appear differently. People yelling, someone is squabbling, fighting, someone attacking you won't really penetrate at all. Because your system will stop having dysregulated responses that are caused by pathogens circulating within your system, okay? We can't change the environment. We're living in the society which is plagued by madness. And it's plagued by madness because of what I just said, parasites penetrating our entire system and the social environment, religious environment, spiritual worship, etc. It's all but the reflection of that hijacked by parasites system of every individual. All our systems are based on the way our nervous system works, the way we process environment. That's why we've created fast-paced environment. We created all these technologies and stuff. That is a reflection of our restlessness. And so, but at this point, you're like, this is venting. This is venting, and I understand. We have to start changing everything from within, that's all. One thing is to expect or not to expect. Another thing is how you perceive life from within. So when we realize certain things on an intellectual, mental levels, it's not enough. because we need to gain whatever's left of life within us to start doing something, which means taking a step towards practical solution is the only way. And one more thing about hell, you know, the hell and heaven, according to the ancients, has always been there in the gut, the hell especially, in the gut, because as long as the gut is polluted, you will be in hell. And this is the way you experience life from within. It's the quality of life rather than, you know, mental, because mental agony is the result of what's happening in your gut. And then what's happening in your gut, as I said, spreads all over, infects the body, and dysregulates, destabilizes nervous system, and makes people spiritually impotent as well as sexually impotent eventually. That's what aging is. That's a disease. Now, when you are experiencing natural being, which is blissful, which is pure peace, it's not an achievement, but it's that restoration of quality of life that you had lost previously and that you took time to restore. And now that's not a spiritual achievement. A spiritual achievement is something very different, but this is a baseline on which you may have a chance, if you maintain that balance and health, to have some spiritual achievement. Now, because we're living in a degraded age, we've taken the base for a spiritual achievement. We call it awakening because we've lost foundation. That's what people are yelling here and there. Grounding, grounding. We need grounding. Now, who knows what grounding is? Grounding means that you simply are absolutely balanced inside. And without this grounding, you can't build anything spiritually. Like a house cannot be built without proper foundation. Now, even if you're at peace, it doesn't mean life won't throw challenges. We're in the madness. We're living in the mad society. It is not a single being is healthy, which means balanced. So that means what? That means that we can't change the environment. And certain people, that's why, again, we had this, the emergence of this spirituality, which is of extremes. Certain groups of people realized, okay, this is madness. They've taken it all wrong. Instead of doing what I've just said, in order to increase sexual potency, they're taking drugs and potions and pursuing sexual perversion in order to overstimulate their nervous system, to have some visions and to feel good about themselves, to imagine that they are gods and goddesses, or they are some prophets, etc. Right? If you've seen that documentary, very good. I'm happy that some professors talk about it now, some brave ones. But I've seen it through my meditation, just no need to talk. Someone else will say when the time is right. But the thing is that I've been speaking about it as demonic spirituality. All this stuff becomes clear to the healthy mind and healthy body once you're free from all this parasitic stuff, internally and externally. You cannot look at the world as being normal. You cannot look at the spirituality as something natural and normal. That's madness. That's cultism. Like all that which is official and unofficial is cultism. they're cultivating something outside of themselves instead of really turning within, because the process of detoxification is tedious. It requires willpower. It's easier to submit your will to someone else or something else in the name of ideologies, falsehood, mythology, etc., than to actually do every day something towards life with a capital L. And when you do something towards life, death with a capital D and time with a capital T become your eternal companions. They protect you rather than that they would consume you. They protect you. Do you want to meet my friends? Death, time? They are the friends and the protection of the immortals. They don't touch them, they protect them. But those who are eaten by parasites meet pseudo-death. They actually invoke it. All these ritualistic stuff, which even went to the point of abuse of other humans, abuse of animals, abuse of life in someone else's body. That's the direct reflection of the human perverted mind, perverted by the parasitic infestation for over thousands of years. And in order to restore this so-called spirituality of Golden Age, we just posted the video, awakening of the Golden Age, we are to return to the roots, to the foundation. And the foundation was always free from ideologies, any kind of political control, mind control agendas, or any other agendas, because it is natural spirituality about which I've been speaking for years. And natural spirituality doesn't need to have a tag. It uses the baseline. The baseline is peace. On the foundation of peace, you can learn, you can have that capacity of a healthy mind, which is fluid, which is flexible rather than rigid, which is open to creation, to absorb the truths of creation in a virgin-like state. That's why I call it self-born knowledge, because it's not that you want that knowledge, it just dawns on you naturally. You're not striving, you're not trying to get drugged, you're not trying to get, stimulated in any shape or form, whether using food as a drug or sexual stimulation or any other drugs to stimulate your nervous system. No. You are grounded, blissful, awakened. Awakened is, I would say, is another term for becoming open to that which is eternal, to that which is indestructible. That is the path, the diamond path. That is the path of all the beings who have opened to immortality, who have opened to the eternal life with capital L. Not for the visions, not for a moment of self-gratification or some kind of minuscule achievement because you perform some fire ceremonies that try to connect to the forces of the natural world, the elements of the natural world which comprise this reality, and just do a little bit, manipulate to your advantage something. That's pseudo-spirituality. That's the degraded, corrupt form of spirituality. A demonic spirituality means that which tries to further fragment and corrupt, because it starts looking at reality not as a whole, but as more and more fragments. How I can become powerful within this little fragment. How can I manipulate this fragment? How can I achieve something within this fragment? That's not spirituality. I mean, It's a degraded form. Still, there must be something there. As long as consciousness is there to a little degree. But it is still limited and limiting. Even worms are a part of creation. There is movement there. There is life there. But that doesn't need to be a part of that type of human being that represents cosmic consciousness. Not every human body at this point represents cosmic consciousness, but those who do, which are very, very few, they should recognize it and return to the roots. And when you are at the root, there's a, comparison with a human being sitting by the tree. You're sitting at the root usually. You're not sitting on the tree, you're sitting at the tree. That's analogy. You are peaceful. When you're at peace, you're protected by the higher consciousness. Nothing can penetrate you because you have that impenetrable energetic shield that can absorb all the lower frequencies. And that is achievable when your gut is free. You know that our sexual urges, especially sexual perversion, sexual perversion is already the outcome of the presence of infestation of different parasitic entities, I would say, within our gut, because gut is very close to sexual organs. Now, when people ask me, how can I sublimate? How can I stop my sexual urges? Well, you don't need to stop. It's the outcome. Your worms are procreating there. All these amoebas and protozoas that infest your gut, all the fungus, they are in a constant, or, they have schedules there probably, in the process of procreation. That's why you have these urges. Their presence in your, cervix, their presence in your, somewhere around your sexual organs, so sometimes even inside the gland, like prostate gland infested by yeast or something like that. That stimulates or sometimes debilitates the function of these organs. That can be both ways, depending on how you misuse. But the presence of worms in the body, sometimes even in around sexual organs, like in case of women especially, if they're going to promiscuity, that causes overstimulation. The presence of these creatures affects the mind, and the mind gets into these fits. That's why, a lot of, for example, Hindu sadhus, monks, or other monks used to take neem leaves, chew them on daily basis. And you know what the superstition says? Oh, it promotes celibacy. That's an extreme. It has nothing to do with real spirituality, pseudo. But you know why it helps? Because it's anti-parasitic and antifungal, right? So when you use these substances, which are anti-parasitic and antifungal, your promiscuous thoughts will reduce. Your desire will be healthy, which is once in a while. You don't need to create taboos, forbid something, because that human being, whether a woman or a man, who is established on that spiritual foundation, at peace, at higher awareness, and who do not have these parasites, will not have these urges. in that kind of way that most of the people have. Why do you think we have such a sexual perversion and pornography and everything? Because the presence of parasites, the pathogens which affect the mind, they boil the blood, they heat up the system, and they heat it up from the tailbone. They heat it up. Some people think they have an awakening, but they have a huge parasitic infestation. So once you remove the parasites, your kriyas, these crazy kriyas, which are almost psychotic, will subside, because the psychotic kriyas are a sign of severe neurological damage because of the presence of parasites. And your ants will stop crawling along the spine. When you are awakened, it's about your awareness and deep, blissful equanimity, peace, tranquility, to the point when you're just open to creation without anything. That's why you're thoughtless. How can you be thoughtless and emotionless when something wriggles in your gut and your blood? It's impossible. And even if you can calm down yourself, let's say you watch someone's transmission, that person transmit, yes, that frequency can put your parasites to a standstill for a moment. It's almost like a hypnosis, you know? They're hypnotized by that frequency. But then they will start going even more viral. That's why it's dangerous. When your body is not prepared, is not purified, spiritual awakening that you are thinking of may go awry, may cause damage, because the foundation hasn't been laid. So I see all these wannabes, new ages, who go into these overstimulations through drugs, through sexual intercourse or perversion, orgies, etc. Penetrate the anus there deeply, overstimulated with something. And the end result is psychotic episodes. They suddenly imagine that they are Mary Magdalene, or they are Isis, or they are Jesus Christ, or they're somebody else, yeah? So, and the next you see, they are in a mental hospital, happy-go-lucky, lost to the function of this mad reality, because some mad people, or most mad people, are functional. When you become dysfunctional, you're locked up. Too much imagination, but this imagination is stimulated because of fungal overgrowth, yeasts, presence of yeasts, which emit hallucinogenic substances naturally into your body as a waste of their livelihood, and then spread all over through the bloodstream. And then suddenly you are going all around, merry-go-round in the head. The drugs actually should be forbidden only for this sake, because even when people take some kind of stimulants, they have to be pure in nature, in their body, so that it doesn't have a side effect. And it should be administered with the precision, mathematical precision, which is a specific dose. The same applies to cannabis, the same applies to all these other things, natural plants, which have some kind of psychedelic or other effects. But now, no, any experience, enlightenment over the weekend is all available. The price is too high to pay. But usually it's because these beings are already infested and corrupt from inside. from before. So it is not the drug. The drug only pushes it to the point of no return, because you're not supposed to take it. Even those corrupt ancients of the past 6,000 years who were already doing all this nonsense, but at least they fasted. At least they knew that before engaging in all these orgies and drug, sex, rock and roll, merry-go-round, at least they would prepare their bodies by fasting and doing some purification as well previously. Now we can just shop spirituality, and the end result is mental disease, emotional imbalances, dysregulation, and first of all, just filthy flesh. You can look pretty, can look handsome, as long as you are less than 25, but won't last, because it will be very quickly eaten away. Life gets eaten away by these parasites. And the more you stimulate your nervous system, the more it shows up as, no, it doesn't show up, but it throws upward, kind of, you may say, to your awareness, all that, which is your corruption. That's why stimulation is not advisable. Even through food. Let's say you indulge, okay, once in a while you take something sweet here and there, it's fine. Once you start eating on daily basis, regularly, something like the most common drug, sugar, carbs, which turn into sugar or have the same effect on your body as sugar does. And if it's especially refined sugar, well, then you're in trouble, buddy boy, right? Your system, if you're pure and you take a bit of sugar, you will immediately feel similar effect to alcohol or different kind of sugars which are similar to alcohol. So dosage is what most of the people don't know. They don't want to know the word dosage. So they overdose on a daily basis and then get used to it until they die very fast. The first sign of overdose is cancer. The overdose of food is cancer, a sign of overdose. Food is drug. That food that most of the people eat, especially in, let's say, in the cities, I mean, it penetrated probably into countryside too nowadays, but most of what we eat is poison. And even what's not poison is poisoned anyways, such as vegetables, processed meats, and all this stuff. So what's to eat, right? So the moral of the story is roll up the sleeves. And really, even if you have meditative state and glimpses, for whatever reason, you've recognized it, and from time to time you can come back to it, your body will be troubling you. And why it is troubling is because the body is so sophisticated. It shows us everything which is imbalanced. Pain, it means loss of energy. Some kind of troubles, something is off with the gut. We've accepted flatulence, skin tags and problems with the skin, blurred vision and everything for normality. We accepted, hair loss, tooth decay, premature. Children are having holes in their teeth. Half of children have bad hair, falling hair. People have blurred vision. because of such high toxicity in the body. Autoimmune diseases, psychosomatic diseases, the same thing. You would get rid of thousands of names, medical terms, only if you remove parasites. You wouldn't even know the word cancer, which is parasitic degeneration of tissues. And you would say, oh, but what if it's in the blood? Well, you know, from time to time, fungus penetrates into the blood or somewhere else and settles there. These parasites are resilient. The only thing that protected us from parasites in ancient times, I'm not talking about past 6,000-7,000 years when we've lost our connection to the higher being within us. It was that electromagnetic shield, that radiation, which is even beyond electromagnetic, that was repelling naturally any income of parasites, and the foods that we were eating were different, because solar radiation was also different, and there was other environment. But then we realized that we're losing it, and so we resorted to the plants. We started studying plants, if plants could somehow regulate this loss. So can we biochemically alterate a state of being? And so we discovered that we created this entire science of pharmacology, alchemy, where we found out that certain substances, if melted, burnt, powdered, crushed, mixed, transmuted into something else, could affect our body biochemistry. Probably originally we knew that it was with the purpose to remove all these natural forces of decomposition that existed on this planet. And later on, we realized that maybe we lost that idea, that it's about parasites, and we just continued passing this knowledge on, just saying, okay, this plant is gonna positively affect your bladder, without actually having awareness what disturbed your bladder to begin with. Yes, there is also an energetic component here, which is your energy body. Some plants were some kind of portals to the higher forces of this natural world. Or so by connecting or by ingesting certain plants, we would connect with that external source of energy again to replenish the loss of energy on a certain level within our energy body. But that was the purpose. But now all the science is lost, so who knows that? Some do, but they're very unknown, with the purpose to let the madness, how do you say, annihilate itself, exterminate itself, and then this knowledge will be revived again for the few survivors. People are expecting cataclysms and, destruction, when the cataclysm has been going on for 6,000 years from within. It's like a internal extermination by shortening. Nature is so sophisticated, smart. It's just annihilates that is devoid of life. Whatever is corrupt is just destroys it, because the destruction, the seed of destruction, is lack of life from within. Lack of life means it has short span and is just consumed by natural forces. That's what's going on. That's what's happening to the current humanity. So don't expect some big waves and huge earthquakes, which might take place here and there. But the biggest problem is from within. it's annihilation of the seed of this current humanity, which is happening from within. So that's, if you understand what I'm trying to say, you have a chance to live, maybe on some level. But the fact is, again, that the whole system, the whole environment is polluted. And anyways, from my standpoint and from what I know in terms of, yugas or ages, right? The golden age, the earth that we know, this earth, right? On this earth, there are only several cycles. The end of Dwapar and the beginning of Dwapar, and in between is Kali. Because when we are on a higher level of vibration, we don't have life here in this particular physical body as we know of now. That's from my standpoint. I could be wrong, it doesn't matter. So when we ascend, we have a different type of earth with different frequency, or different type of, not necessarily earth, but something else there, because our body is of a much higher frequency. But if your body is of high frequency, my body of high frequency, we see each other as solid because we're sharing the same frequency. So when people are talking about golden age on earth, I don't think on this particular earth I am speaking from, that is not, don't expect anything like that. This is just for the experience of the lowest frequencies. And the Dwapar means that you still can access your spiritual essence and can exist in a more fluid and flexible spiritual state. But that's about it. Everything here is of the same kind, and these cycles are repetitive, and they can be different bodies, but pretty much same frequency. They can be different through different cycles, like let's say first original cycle, then second, third, maybe 24th. Every time on this earth, there will be the end of Dwapar and the beginning of Dwapar, and in between there will be Kali Yuga. But if we don't speak in terms of Hinduism, it can be whatever other terms used for that. But the point is that there will be only the ability to support the physical body and to support kind of physical and spiritual states, the lowest spiritual state. That's it. The thing is that when we're, let's say if you started younger, it's very difficult to imagine that you might have parasites. And you might think, nah, this is just, she's fanatical, she's, well, everyone has parasites. Children have parasites. And it is a known fact. But because then they say that the immune system clears them up, it doesn't ever clean them up fully. It's just that it clears the obvious infection, but it doesn't remove the eggs and everything. So they stay dormant. And the more you start losing life with a capital L, which is your energy throughout life, the more it becomes obvious that something lives in there. So yes, you may have some kind of moments when you see, oh, I can be in meditation. No. The question arises, what happens after you come out of that meditation, how you deal with life? Because if you are balanced and have no loss of energy, which is a very rare case, I would say almost non-existent, you would have very similar, you'll be very free. And you'll be very abundant, and you will be able to manage your life in a very, very aligned way where you're aware of everything, you're very grounded. There is no loss, neither physically nor on any level. So it's kind of, it doesn't mean that, again, loss and gain is just very man-made term, but loss meaning that you're just flowing. The material losses are but inevitable, and material gains are but inevitable when you are in this reality, because it's a law of life. But it means that there's no loss in your being. Your perception is more or less same. Even if you were shattered by something happened in your life, or you, not shattered, but that's a bad word, I mean shaken up a little bit, you are able to return yourself back to the balanced state very quickly, very easily. But if you still have certain presence, parasitic presence, from time to time, you'll be extremely restless, anxious, searching. As long as the search is there on some level, it means there's still something to look into. I also realize that some spiritual states can be also induced by the presence of certain parasites in certain areas, like hallucinations, or some kind of other apparitions that we call spiritual. You know, that's because of fungus. That's because of maybe other pathogens in the body that are circulating, because they are chemicals. They affect our biochemistry and neurology. Are people prone to these kind of things should also check themselves. Because a stable being doesn't have much of that. The only difference is if someone can exit the body absolutely consciously without any fear and any hallucinations, that is a free state. We come back to all the other intermediate experiences, apparitions, hallucinations, all these different things. This is the residue. This is the parasitic residue. This is the corrupt residue to which you have access because of the presence of parasitic entities that affect your brain chemistry, and because of your genetics, which allows you to access a certain field of the collective awareness or collective consciousness. And so I would be extremely cautioned or cautious with any such visual, especially visual or audible experiences, or any type of experiences where you have some kind of sensations or hearing, or, you know, and all these people who are claiming to be clairvoyant, and this is a mental imbalance, mental emotional imbalance. I can anger so many people by saying, because it means basically that who they are now, which is their sick, mentally sick and physically sick state, is what they are, and not any spiritual power. They talk to spirits, they talk to all this. These are low energetic vibrations that our mind can interpret within its own human capacity. Like in a dream, you are actually experiencing energies that you interpret into pictures, right? And the same, some pictures are familiar and some are not. So the same happens when you are facing that collective mental emotional residue, because you're connecting to that field through whichever means, through your biochemistry, through overstimulation of your nervous system, etc., etc. But that is a different pool of energies, which are subtler in nature, but still of a low frequency. Again, this is different types of frequencies, so which your mind will be interpreting and building into some kind of a visual or audible structure. And then you will say that you've experienced something. all of these things are not a sign of any spiritual achievement or any spiritual anything. These are the products of unrefined mind, unrefined genetic material of ancestors, the corrupt genetic material. And these genes allow you to access this collective pool of information and then interpret it whichever way your conscious capacity is able to interpret. And all you can do is mess your own mind and the minds of other people. All these oracular powers and all these are just, you get access to the preconceived ideas of different people, of a certain cluster or group of people who already have a determination. Determination means the conscious energy is focused on that particular outcome. And now you are accessing that pool and telling, oh, this group of people or this country or this people might have this, might execute this action or might do this and that. Because that's the energy that is produced or emitted into the collective pool of mental, emotional information. And getting connected to that pool is nothing extraordinary. All of these prophets and oracles are just, speculating, especially about the future, about the present, where their lives and people they're connected to or people who come to them. It's easy. They can connect to the pool and see the predetermined outcome because that has been predetermined, premeditated, sometimes even before incarnation. So that's not some future prediction. That's just accessing information. It's like I go to a library and access a record and then say, okay, this is, because that's already happened on some level. So what's really spiritual then? What's spiritual is your physical purity. Consciousness is the root. Body is the fruit in this case. Now, body has also the root, physical. Now, fruit grows in a proper balanced environment. That is your health. That is peace. That is bliss. That is glow. Then you become a potent fruit that can have potent seeds. The seeds are those that contain potent information that can produce potent offspring. Potency means intelligence, not the way you operate your sexual organs. Potency means that seed that carries information. What that seed activates when you are grown. It activates the access to a specific pool within the collective consciousness. And that pool, what does that pool contain? What information? If you are a potent seed, you have access to very high knowledge and information of how to maintain this world in a balanced way. How to deal with creation in such a way where the balance is not upset on any level. That spiritual power, spiritual wisdom is to maintain balance on a micro or macro levels. That's all I can say. Because when you have balance, there is nothing but peace and bliss. And on the physical level, this balance can be maintained when the body, first of all, is reconnected with the spiritual substance, essence, awareness. And it can govern that awareness can govern the existence of the body in such a way where it envelops it with such a level of spiritual radiation awareness that no parasites can penetrate. Plus, it minds how it nurtures and nourishes this body because there are different levels of food. Food is what we hear, food is what we see, food is what we do or engage with. Food is what we put into our mouth. That's also a different type of food. What we rub on our skin is the food. The energy that you absorb by the body, like solar energy, well, that's food. Wisdom. Wisdom is a sign of spirituality, because wisdom is humble. Our wisdom is highly spiritually intelligent. It means that's a quality of a balanced, healthy body and mind in alignment with the higher being, which means you manage resources in a balanced way. You sustain, you remove, and you balance in a very balanced way, all of these things. You absorb energy only to a degree you need, whether it's a physical food, whether it's a spiritual food, or any other food. You know how much, you don't ever take more than that. No, you give more than that. That's wisdom. If you can operate in this life through this wisdom, there is no loss and no gain. There is just balance, bliss, and abundance. Abundance means you have access, but it doesn't mean that you always use it. Abundance of knowledge, abundance of spirituality, material abundance, all in alignment, governed by wisdom. Without assumption of any role. The less we assume any role, the more we glow from within, because our spirit permeates the body. That's your golden apple from a fairy tale, you know, or the golden bird that glows with fire. Why siddhas and yogis talked about tapasya, fire? Why they say this process is going to be felt like you're going to be heating up? Because you're detoxing. Because you are improving your immune system and making it so durable and impenetrable, so that that fire burns everything which is of parasitic nature. Just a side note. Okay.